US President Donald Trump gave his first State of the Union address on January 30th, 2018. It was, in my opinion, an average speech. Probably the highlight of it all was the story of Based Crutch Man, who managed to escape from North Korea after losing a leg in an accident. An event that Donald Trump used to emphasize the brutality of the North Korean regime. That's not to say that there weren't a few low points either. Nancy Pelosi spent the entire night looking like she was playing with her dentures. The Democratic side of the room booed when Trump motioned to the two sets of parents of kids killed due to illegal immigrant gang violence that were in attendance. And the Black Caucus looked like somebody shat in their dinner when it was announced that statistically, poor black people were economically doing better than ever.
And something I'm very proud of, African American unemployment stands at the lowest rate ever recorded.
I guess it's going to be hard to convince them to vote for you solely on the basis of race, if they're not stuck in perpetual grinding poverty, eh guys? But everybody expected the Nunes Memo to drop during the State of the Union. The timing was right, and it would have been a great way to decisively win that conversation once and for all. Personally, I'm glad that Trump didn't do it, though. I don't know about you guys, but I'm fine with the State of the Union being a little less partisan than normal political affairs. Nonetheless, during Trump's walk out of the room, the memo did come up.
Let's release the memo. Oh, yeah. Oh, don't worry. 100%. Can you imagine that? Yes, sir.
And there you have it. Trump's agreed to release the memo. And it's about at this point in the timeline of events that Democratic propaganda went into overdrive. But it was all for naught, because on February 2nd, 2018, the Nunes Memo was finally released. Let's give it a read. Oh, and if you've already read it, timestamp on the screen is where you want to skip ahead to. This memorandum provides members an update on significant facts relating to the committee's ongoing investigation into the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation and their use of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act during the 2016 presidential election cycle. Our findings, which are detailed below, raise concerns with the legitimacy and legality of certain DOJ and FBI interactions with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and represent a troubling breakdown of legal processes established to protect the American people from abuses related to the FISA process. On October 21st, 2016, DOJ and FBI sought and received a FISA probable cause order, not under Title VII, authorizing electronic surveillance on Carter Page from the FISC. Page is a U.S. citizen who served as a volunteer advisor to the Trump presidential campaign. Consistent with requirements under FISA, the application had to be first certified by the director or deputy director of the FBI. It then required the approval of the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, or the Senate-confirmed Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division. The FBI and DOJ obtained one initial FISA warrant targeting Carter Page and 3 FISA renewals from the FISC. As required by statute, a FISA order on an American citizen must be renewed by the FISC every 90 days, and each renewal requires a separate finding of probable cause. Then Director James Comey signed 3 FISA applications in question on behalf of the FBI, and Deputy Director Andrew McCabe signed 1. Then DAG Sally Yates, then Acting DAG Dana Boente, and DAG Rod Rosenstein each signed 1 or more FISA applications on behalf of the DOJ. Due to the sensitive nature of foreign intelligence activity, FISA submissions, including renewals before the FISC, are classified. As such, the public's confidence in the integrity of the FISA process depends on the court's ability to hold the government to the highest standard, particularly as it relates to the surveillance of American citizens. However, the FISC's rigor in protecting the rights of Americans, which is reinforced by 90-day renewals of surveillance orders, is necessarily dependent on the government's production to the court of all material and relevant facts. This should include information potentially favorable to the target of the FISA application that is known by the government. In the case of Carter Page, the government had at least 4 independent opportunities before the FISC to accurately provide an accounting of the relevant facts. However, our findings indicate that, as described below, material and relevant information was omitted. The dossier compiled by Christopher Steele, the Steele dossier, on behalf of the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign, formed an essential part of the Carter Page FISA application. Steele was a longtime FBI source who was paid over $160,000 by the DNC and Clinton campaign via the law firm Perkins Coie and research firm Fusion GPS to obtain derogatory information on Donald Trump's ties to Russia. Neither the initial application in October 2016 nor any of the renewals disclose or reference the role of the DNC, Clinton campaign, or any party or campaign in funding Steele's efforts, even though the political origins of the Steele dossier were then known to senior DOJ and FBI officials. The initial FISA application notes Steele was working for a named U.S. person, but does not name Fusion GPS and principal Glenn Simpson, who was paid by a U.S. law firm, Perkins Coie, representing the DNC, even though it was known by the DOJ at the time that political actors were involved with the Steele dossier. The application does not mention Steele was ultimately working on behalf of and paid by the DNC and Clinton campaign, or that the FBI had separately authorized payment to Steele for the same information. The Carter-Page FISA application also cited extensively a September 23, 2016 Yahoo News article by Michael Iskoff, which focuses on Page's July 2016 trip to Moscow. This article does not corroborate the Steele dossier because it is derived from information leaked by Steele himself to Yahoo News. The Page FISA application incorrectly assesses that Steele did not directly provide the information to Yahoo News. Steele has admitted in British court filings that he met with Yahoo News and several other outlets in September 2016 at the direction of Fusion GPS. Perkins Coie was aware of Steele's initial media contacts because they hosted at least one meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2016 with Steele and Fusion GPS, where this matter was discussed. Steele was suspended and then terminated as an FBI source for what the FBI defines as the most serious of violations, an unauthorized disclosure to the media of his relationship with the FBI in an October 30, 2016 Mother Jones article by David Korn. Steele should have been terminated for his previous undisclosed contacts with Yahoo and other outlets in September, before the Page application was submitted to the FISC in October. But Steele improperly concealed from and lied to the FBI about those contacts. Steele's numerous encounters with the media violated the cardinal rule of source handling, maintaining confidentiality, and demonstrated that Steele had become a less than reliable source for the FBI. Before and after Steele was terminated as a source, he maintained contact with DOJ via then-associate Deputy Attorney General Bruce Orr, a senior DOJ official who worked closely with Deputy Attorneys General Yates and later Rosenstein. Shortly after the election, the FBI began interviewing Orr, documenting his communications with Steele. For example, in September 2016, Steele admitted to Orr his feelings against then-candidate Trump when Steele said that he was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president. This clear evidence of Steele's bias was recorded by Orr at the time, and subsequently in official FBI files, but not reflected in any of the Page FISA applications. During this same period, Orr's wife was employed by Fusion GPS to assist in the cultivation of opposition research on Trump. Orr later provided the FBI with all of his wife's opposition research, paid for by the DNC and Clinton campaign, via Fusion GPS. The Orr's relationship with Steele and Fusion GPS was inexplicably concealed from the FISC. According to the head of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, Assistant Director Bill Priestap, corroboration of the Steele dossier was in its infancy at the time of the initial Page FISA application. After Steele was terminated, a source validation report conducted by an independent unit within FBI assessed Steele's reporting as only minimally corroborated. Yet in early January 2017, Director Comey briefed President-elect Trump on a summary of the Steele dossier, even though it was, according to his June 2017 testimony, salacious and unverified. While the FISA application relied on Steele's past record of credible reporting on other unrelated matters, it ignored or concealed his anti-Trump financial and ideological motivations. Furthermore, Deputy Director McCabe testified before the committee in December 2017 that no surveillance warrant would have been sought from the FISC without the Steele dossier information. The Page FISA application also mentions information regarding fellow Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos, but there is no evidence of any cooperation or conspiracy between Page and Papadopoulos. The Papadopoulos information triggered the opening of an FBI counterintelligence investigation in late July 2016 by FBI agent Pete Strzok. Strzok was reassigned by the Special Counsel's Office to FBI Human Resources for improper text messages with his mistress, FBI attorney Lisa Page, no known relation to Carter Page, where they both demonstrated a clear bias against Trump and in favor of Clinton, whom Strzok had also investigated. The Strzok-Lisa Page texts also reflect extensive discussions about the investigation, orchestrating leaks to the media, and include a meeting with Deputy Director McCabe to discuss an insurance policy against President Trump's election. Also, yes, that was a Steam key in my mentions. And yes, by the time this video goes up, I will have claimed it. Too bad, suckers! Boy, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, I want to make it clear that the Nunes Memo is not evidence of anything in itself. It's a description of evidence that the FBI has in its possession, that the members of the HPSCI have viewed and reviewed personally. I think it's important that the actual evidence behind this memo also sees the light of day, at least in some kind of media digestible format, which, to be fair, not all evidence can be, sometimes due to its very nature. Secondly, a lot of people are calling the Nunes Memo a dud because it focuses on Christopher Steele's personal bias against Donald Trump. The FBI deals in biased sources all the time, and Steele's public opposition to Trump's campaign shouldn't be enough to discount his information used in the FBI's FISA warrant application. But the Nunes Memo implies that it is. And well, the those detractors are partially right. Steele's personal opinions alone aren't enough to dismiss the FISA warrant application. But you know what is enough to dismiss it? The fact that the money for Steele's investigations came from the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign, as stated in the memo. But not only that, in 2016, the community organizing group Obama for America, the group that President Obama's campaign infrastructure eventually morphed into after his second presidential win, also contributed money to Steele's project. Moreover, the FBI corroborated Steele's data in the FISA warrant application using a Yahoo News article. An article that, instead of acting as an independent source of information, used leaks from Steele's dossier, covertly provided by Steele himself to Yahoo News. And none of these obvious conflicts of interest were included in the FISA warrant application. Yeah, those facts might give the Nunes Memo a bit more clout, eh? It doesn't matter that Steele opposed Trump personally. What matters was Steele's conduct. What matters is that Obama's FBI was so willing to ignore the obvious red flags in the pursuit of a political agenda. There's also been criticism of Nunes himself for not personally looking at some of the evidence used in the memo. On the surface, this sounds like a valid criticism, but it's pretty clear that it's coming from people who have no idea how politics actually works. Senators and congressmen don't actually write legislation themselves, you know. They have an army of aides that each study a specific strand of an issue, bring their research together, construct a bill or a speech, and then the official they work for looks the final product over, revises it, and receives a briefing on its contents. The honest truth is, elected officials are simply too busy to spend thousands of hours researching every fine grain of every issue they come across. The demands of the job require that they hire people that they trust to be politically aligned with them to do a lot of the legwork. In the case of the Nunes Memo, no, Nunes didn't actually read the FISA applications themselves, as a lot of outlets are now reporting. But do you know who did read them? Trey Gowdy, another member of the HPSCI, and one that co-authored the Nunes Memo. The implication that Nunes just shat out a memo without anybody even taking a peek at the evidence is a ridiculous falsehood. Frankly, it's really telling that the Democratic narrative switched from the Nunes Memo being a grave danger to national security if released, revealing intelligence sources, compromising the nation, and on one occasion from Nancy Pelosi, being too complicated for the American public to read, to the Nunes Memo being a nothing burger. It can't be simultaneously destructive and benign. And really, you just listened to it here. Did any of that sound like sensitive information? Was any of it especially hard to grasp? It's almost like I said in the previous video, the response to the Democrats has been one of desperation, grasping at anything they can. It's also really telling just how firmly under the Democratic thumb the mainstream media is too. Let's think back over the past, say, 40 or 50 years of politics. Do you guys remember the Pentagon Papers? Watergate? The Iran-Contra affair? Do you remember any situation in the past in which the government would have preferred the media simply ignored them, and the media flat out refused? This whole Nunes Memo situation is one of the first times I can recall that the press would rather conceal government misdeeds instead of expose them. Oh, but you want to talk about the Trump-Russia connection? Sure, go right ahead. Shit up the entire Overton window with that garbage endlessly. I'm not even taking a firm stance on the Russian collusion issue right now. I'm actually in the middle of the road on that one. But when the media will blow up the smallest scrap of half-baked evidence, the smallest whisper of fifth-party hearsay, but completely shut down all reporting when it comes to a government-authored memo that may swing Trump's way, journalism is dead, guys. At least in the mainstream media. Even the pretense of ethics is gone now. And finally, if we needed a glittering reminder of the absolute cancer that the third-way Democrats are, this is it, and it's been a long time coming. Ever since the Clinton years, the Democratic Party has had no problems with weaponizing apolitical branches of the government against the Republicans. Obama's use of the FBI in this manner was only the latest incident. For some reason, today's Democratic voters have completely forgotten the rapid expansion of surveillance under Obama's NSA, or Bill Clinton's use of the Internal Revenue Service to target his political opponents, or Filegate. Of course, the left has more important things to do than worry about stuff like that. Like, hey, how about complaining about the State of the Union address as another way to distract from the whole thing? I mean, the ACLU is angry that Trump used the word America a lot because the word America is exclusionary to illegal immigrants. Yes, the American Civil Liberties Union is mad at Trump, the American president, for using the word America in the State of the American Union address because illegal immigrants who have illegally immigrated to America are going to be angry about being reminded exactly whose borders they illegally crossed. Jesus fucking Christ. That offense doesn't stop them from crossing over, though. And it also doesn't stop those poor innocent dreamers from the last video from breaking the law, too. Border agents arrest DACA recipient in Texas for smuggling immigrants. It's almost like everything I fucking said in part 2 of this series has come to pass. But this is okay, because Democrats want dreamers in DACA, and even illegal immigrants too, because that's more Democratic voters in their pocket. That's why California is experimenting with granting anybody who holds a driver's license the ability to vote. Even illegal immigrants who hold a variation of the license, specifically specifically for illegals. Yeah, I'm just gonna stop here. The deeper I go down this rabbit hole, the dumber this shit gets. At this point, it's a long shot that the Nunes Memo was crafted to draw attention away from the government shutdown. And I now have another reason to disbelieve that possibility. If that were actually the case, it would be the dumbest Republican stratagem yet, because the Democrats shutting down the government over DACA is increasingly making them look like villains. Honestly, this story has a lot of little pieces that don't fit together cleanly, but are still important enough to include as context. Like this older video of Comey admitting under oath that he had no knowledge of a campaign by the FBI to wiretap then-candidate Trump's campaign, which we now know to be a lie.
The president stated, "I'd bet a good lawyer could make a great case out of the fact that President Obama was tapping my phones in October just prior to the election." Director Comey, you're a good lawyer. Can you make out a great case that President Obama wiretapped Mr. Trump's phones just prior to the election, in light of the fact you have said there's no evidence of that?
All I can say is what I said before, that we don't have any information that supports those tweets.
Now here I think you've said there's been no evidence of an illegal wiretap by President Obama. Is that right?
I've said the FBI and the Department of Justice have no information to support those tweets.
Or like the upcoming second memo on the FISA applications, this one authored by Adam Schiff, designed to report from the other side of the issue, since the Democratic position is that the Nunes memo is inaccurate. The Schiff memo still hasn't been voted on, and the mainstream media is claiming that the Republicans are blocking the release, when the more likely answer is that they're still just working through the process. And to be clear, I support the release of both memos as well as the available evidence. Or like Feinstein and Schiff's request that Twitter and Facebook block the release the memo hashtag and dox the accounts that use the hashtag to the US government. All the while, groups sympathetic to the Democrats set up spam bots to flood Twitter with "we need to be heard loud and clear," followed by hashtag remove Nunes 12 times, followed by retweet, copy, and paste. Let's get it, everyone. To summarize, I'm not sure if everything in the Nunes memo is 100% accurate, but let's take a look at the situation. Democrats regularly weaponize arms of the government against their opponents. Democrat money was involved in obtaining the evidence, and then laundering that evidence through Yahoo News for a FISA warrant. Democrats used every trick in the book to either stop the memo's release or downplay and discredit it after the fact. And at least so far, nothing in the Nunes memo has actually been directly argued against by the Democrats. Taking all this into account, I'm currently leaning towards believing the Nunes memo. I mean, my opinion is not finalized. The Schiff memo still needs to come out, and even if it never sees the light of day, the reasoning Republicans use to block it will speak volumes itself. And like I said earlier, I'm still on the fence regarding the whole Trump-Russia thing. But at the end of the day, did Obama, Hillary, and other forces in the Democratic Party weaponize the FBI against Trump's insurgent presidential campaign? I think the answer might be yes.
To making the FISA court much more transparent so the American people can understand what's being done in their name, in the name of national security, so that we can have a more informed debate over the balance between privacy and security. I think this can be accomplished while also maintaining sources and methods and not compromising some of the very real national security concerns at stake.